Hello again. Trying to cram a sort of ideal training plan into an extremely busy life can be like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's basically impossible. So there has to be some sort of compromise. The other real problem is that it can be quite stressful, so it can perhaps even risk damaging your health. So finding a way to make these compromises, have an effective training plan and a sensible, enjoyable life is really important if you want to pursue your sport in a healthy and sustainable way. So if you had a blank sheet of paper or a schedule that had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, free to fit your training in, well, it'd be no problem. You could train optimally, you could recover optimally and get the best out of yourself without worrying about it too much. But even professional athletes who are full-time have to sleep. They have a life, they have family, they might have girlfriends, boyfriends, children, and they have to meet commitments for sponsors and things like that. So even they don't have a blank sheet of paper to play with. They've got to fit the training in around the life, or fit the life around the training is more realistic for a professional athlete. But most of us aren't professional athletes. Most of us have to fit our training around our life so that we can enjoy our sport, which isn't our job, it's a hobby, so it has to compromise a little bit at some times. To achieve this, you can follow some principles. I like to write down all the things that have to be done. So you might have to, you have to sleep, you have to eat, otherwise you can't train. Most people have to go to work, or at least have some sort of structure to their life. They have to meet certain commitments that they have. And so putting those into some sort of calendar, so, when you get up, when you go to bed, when you go to work, how long it takes you to get to work, when you have your meals, whether you have to put the kids to bed or something like that. Just a list of what the things you have to do. And then, of course, you can add in things that are nice to do, things that you like to do, things that help you function as a person, but maybe things that you don't actually have to do. And once you know the time you've got available for your training, you can start to put in your key training sessions. So what I do is pick the most important training sessions first, fit them into the daily plan, into the routine, make sure there's enough recovery between the most important training sessions, and then it's a case of filling in what other things you can do. But you can use some tricks or some techniques or some principles or ideas to make things a bit easier, give yourself a bit more space, and therefore maybe do more training or do more effective training. Routine is everything, and creating good habits is everything within that routine. Because if you've got a good routine and you do similar things on similar times each day of the week, then you don't have to think about it. If they're habits, you don't have to think about it. And you can waste a lot of time procrastinating. So creating a good routine and knowing your plan in advance, knowing what you're going to do in your training in advance, can save you a huge amount of time and also make the sessions more likely to happen because you don't have to stop and think, oh, should I really be doing this or should I be doing something else? So one really effective thing, if it works for you, is to train first thing in the morning, because you've got nothing to disrupt your routine then. You just get out of bed. Obviously getting out of bed is not necessarily the easiest thing if you're getting up really early. Get your kit on, you're already got your kit laid out, get down and get on your bike or get out for your run. So your training happens as the first thing of the day, so there's less chance of it being disrupted. And whatever time you do your training, avoiding this disruption is a really good way to make sure it happens and make sure that you've got as much time as possible to do the training. So for instance, if you always do it after a certain thing that you have to do, like if say you always have lunch at 12 and you finish lunch at 12:30, if you always do your training straight after lunch, then you always do your training, as long as you don't get derailed by having an extra cup of coffee or something like that. Similarly, if you always have your evening meal with the family at 7 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. or whatever, and then you do your training straight after that, after they're maybe sitting down and watching telly or whatever, and you avoid getting drawn into that perhaps time suck, then your training always happens and you always do it at the same time each day. And there are other benefits to this routine, which of course I've talked about in other videos, in that if you always do the same sort of thing on the same day at the similar time each week, then you can spot trends. Are you always tired on a Wednesday afternoon? Do you always find it difficult to do your interval session on a Tuesday morning? So therefore you can then swap things around and adjust your schedule to make it more effective, so that your training sessions are more effective. And if you're always tired on a Wednesday afternoon, but you still want to get some extra volume in and you know that you can recover for Thursday or Friday or the weekend when you've got another important session to do, then just do an easy training session. In a busy life, things always crop up. They're not always predictable. So one thing to bear in mind is something is usually better than nothing. So you might have a great plan, you might have a specific thing you want to do on a certain day, but being flexible about it and accepting that if you get some sort of training session done, it's better than not doing anything. And maybe swapping the sessions around with something later in the week can work effectively. So you can get something out of the training session, and just having in mind what your weekly plan is means you can easily substitute something if you need to. Or if you can't substitute anything, just get out and do something. Maybe you spend half an hour playing on Facebook, social media or something in the evenings before you go to bed. Well, can you just not do that? Go to bed half an hour earlier, and then you can get up half an hour earlier, and you've then got half an hour to do some training. And if you can fit 2 sessions a day, that can be your extra half hours volume, you know, an easy ride of 30 minutes in the morning or 20 minutes in the morning, so you've got to get changed and stuff. That actually all adds up. You know, if you do that 4 days a week, that's 80 minutes of extra training you've done in the week. And if you're really time crunched, that can make a big difference. We talked about removing obstacles, so get everything ready. If you know your plan, you can get everything ready for when you need to do your training session. So if you're training first thing in the morning, you've got everything ready. You just need to get your kit on, get on the bike or get out for your run. Similarly, if you're training straight after work and you normally change out of your work clothes, change into your training kit. Don't sit down for that cup of tea, get on with the training straight away. Don't give yourself any reason to not do the training session, and tell yourself that you can sit down and relax and enjoy that cup of tea or coffee after you've done the training session. And it'll be much more rewarding, and you might be able to give yourself a little treat like a cake or an energy bar or biscuit or something with that. In addition to not giving yourself space to think too much about whether or not to do the session, whether to sit down and have a break before you do the training, have some ready-made answers to your excuses, because you're in a chimp, your emotional side might think, oh, well, we can just sit down and have a cup of tea, or maybe we don't have to do the training today, or maybe we can do it later. But having some ready-made answers like, well, I'll enjoy my cup of tea much more after I've done the training session than I will now if I just sit there feeling guilty about not doing it. And if I sit down now, I might not have enough time to do it. So basically, I'll feel really bad the next day for missing my training session. And in 6 months' time, if you've kept missing the sessions or you've gone out of the habit of doing the training, then you'll think, well, why did I do that? You know, I don't have the fitness. I could have, if I'd just been doing these 30 or 40 minutes a day, I'd be pretty fit by now. But in 6 months' time, if you've not been doing anything, you're starting from square one again. Training for longer endurance events requires you to do longer endurance training sessions. So these need to be planned into your schedule because they take up a lot of time. And if you're doing a super long training session, it might take all day, or it might take a couple of days if you're training for some sort of bike packing or multi-day event when you need to do your practice training session. So you need to fit these into your schedule. But conversely, you don't have to do many of them. And you have to recover from them. So once you've done this, once you've scheduled this long session into your plan, remember you enjoy it because you're choosing to do this. You're not doing it because somebody's making you do it. You're doing it because you enjoy it. So once you've enjoyed this trip, this adventure, you can take time to recover, spend time with family. You might be able to schedule a big weekend of training and then have a weekend with the family or weekend with the loved ones, or even a weekend at work and do a bit of extra work that you've had to miss because of your training. Because you need to recover from these big training sessions, so you can use that recovery, just redistributing your time. You can get your family involved or get your loved ones involved in these long training sessions. So you're not actually going away from them, you're doing it together. And that can be really effective. A few people I work with have done that. They've got the family to support them in the long training sessions. And then also the family have taken an interest in the sport. They're much more accepting of the time away. And they also get involved in the events as well. A lot of them have travelled to events and supported in events and volunteered in things like London, Edinburgh, London. Essentially, it's an exercise in creativity to change the training that you have planned or that you need to do to fit into the life that you have to do. And Claire and I have got a lot of experience in helping people do that. So if you need a bit of help, formally or informally, just get in touch, make a comment, send us an email. We'd love to hear from you, we'd love to help, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.